The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Concordat stretched across 3 kilometers of artificial space, its crystalline walls refracting starlight in impossible patterns. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the entrance, her ceremonial uniform crisp despite the 16-hour journey from Earth. Behind her, Admiral James Rodriguez and Dr. Maya Patel maintained equally stoic expressions as representatives from over 2,000 alien civilizations filed past them, each barely containing their disdain. Imagine, a towering Xanaxian whispered to its companion, translators doing nothing to hide the mockery. They still use chemical rockets for their cargo ships. The Xanaxian's companion, a being composed entirely of shifting plasma contained within an ornate mechanical shell, flickered in what passed for laughter among its kind. Neither bothered to lower their voices. To them, humans were barely more than clever animals who had stumbled onto faster-than-light travel through sheer luck. Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile, though her hand tightened imperceptibly on her ceremonial staff. The staff, like everything else about the human delegation, was more than it appeared. Within its seemingly decorative crystalline head, quantum computers ran continuous analyses of every alien species present, mapping their reactions, calculating probabilities, and updating Earth's strategic position moment by moment. The assembly hall itself was a testament to the technological gap Earth supposedly faced. The artificial pocket dimension it occupied allowed for physics-defying architecture, with floating platforms carrying delegates from across the galaxy in apparent defiance of gravity. Holographic displays showed real-time updates from countless worlds, while matter transmitters brought in new arrivals in shimmers of light. High Elder Kixtil, a massive arthropodoid being whose species had achieved spaceflight when humans were still hunting mammoths, called the assembly to order. Its chelicers clicked in what humans had learned was barely concealed amusement as it addressed the gathered representatives. "We welcome our newest applicants to the Galactic Concordat," it announced, mandibles twitching. "The species designating themselves humans have requested full membership status, having achieved rudimentary faster-than-light travel within the past solar cycle of their world." Murmurs and clicks of amusement rippled through the assembly. Sarah stepped forward, her movements measured and precise. The quantum computers in her staff registered spikes in electromagnetic emissions from several species. They were scanning her, trying to assess threat levels. They would find exactly what Earth wanted them to find. "Honorable representatives of the Concordat," Sarah began, her voice clear and unwavering. "We come seeking friendship and exchange of knowledge." The practiced words carried an undertone that only the most perceptive might catch. Not submission, but patience. A void-born representative, its body a writhing mass of dark energy barely contained by ancient technology, interrupted with what passed for a laugh among its kind. "Exchange of knowledge. What could your species possibly teach us? You achieved your first fusion reaction barely a century ago. The youngest spacefaring race here mastered stellar engineering before your kind learned to smelt metal." Admiral Rodriguez shifted slightly, and Dr. Patel's fingers twitched toward her davad. But Sarah remained perfectly still, her smile never wavering. The movement was precisely calculated, just enough to draw attention, but not enough to reveal anything. "Perhaps," Sarah replied, "we have something to learn from each other." The words were diplomatic, but carried a weight that made several of the more militant species shift uncomfortably. Something in her tone reminded them of prey animals that turned out to be predators in disguise. The next 6 hours were an exercise in calculated humiliation. One by one, representatives from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations showcased their achievements. The Xanaxians demonstrated their mastery of dark energy, creating and destroying micro-universes as casually as humans might snap their fingers. The Voidborn revealed ships that could traverse galaxies in days. The High Elder's own species displayed weapons that could unmake solar systems. Each demonstration was accompanied by pointed comments about humanity's primitive technology, about how their fastest ships could barely reach nearby stars. about their quaint reliance on physical weapons rather than psychic abilities or quantum manipulation. Throughout it all, the human delegation watched and recorded. Their seemingly decorative accessories contained sensors far more advanced than anything they were supposed to possess, mapping and analyzing every demonstration with precision that would have shocked their hosts if they knew about it. As the day drew to a close, High Elder still turned its compound eyes toward the human delegation. And now, perhaps our guests would like to demonstrate their own achievements. The question dripped with mockery. Sarah stepped forward once more, her movement deliberately slow. "We would be honored," she said, "to provide a demonstration tomorrow, if the assembly would permit us time to prepare." The request sparked another wave of amusement throughout the hall. Several delegates openly laughed. What could these primitives possibly need to prepare? Their technology was so basic it could barely be called technology at all. "Granted," the High Elder announced magnanimously, "though perhaps you should focus on your atmospheric cleaning technologies. We understand those are still giving your species trouble." More laughter followed. As the assembly dispersed, the human delegation made their way to their assigned quarters. Only when they were alone, in a room swept clean of surveillance devices, by technology no one suspected they possessed, did their expressions change. Admiral Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. They bought it completely. Dr. Patel nodded, already reviewing the data they'd gathered. Every single species showed off their best technology, just as we hoped. The arrogance of assumed superiority works every time. Sarah removed her ceremonial staff, its quantum computers already processing the day's information. Humanity has played the role of the primitive newcomer perfectly for the past 5 years. Tomorrow, we show them why that was a mistake. Because what none of them knew, what humanity had carefully hidden since their first contact, was that Earth had achieved faster than light travel nearly 50 years ago. What they'd shown the galaxy was carefully crafted fiction, a facade of primitive technology hiding achievements that would shock even the oldest civilizations. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn why underestimating humanity was the greatest mistake they could make. The fleets hiding in dimensional pockets throughout the sector, the quantum weapons masked as decorative items, the true extent of human technological advancement. It would all be revealed. And perhaps, Sarah thought as she prepared for the next day, they would finally learn the most important lesson of all. True civilization wasn't measured by technological advancement, but by the wisdom to use it properly. Tomorrow would mark either the beginning of a new era of galactic cooperation, or serve as a reminder of why humanity had chosen to hide their true capabilities for so long. The stage was set. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations had walked right into humanity's carefully laid trap, their own arrogance blinding them to the truth hidden in plain sight. As night fell over the artificial dimension of the assembly hall, Sarah Chen smiled. Tomorrow would change everything, and she would be there to watch it all unfold. Dawn broke over the artificial horizon of the assembly hall, casting prismatic shadows through its crystalline walls. In their private quarters, the human delegation made their final preparations. Admiral Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that shouldn't have existed according to their supposed technological level, watching as green confirmation signals flickered across a map of the sector. "Ghost Fleet reports ready," he said quietly. "All ships in position and maintaining quantum silence. The Concordat sensors haven't detected a thing." Dr. Patel's fingers danced across her datapad, its true capabilities hidden beneath a facade of primitive touchscreen technology. "The quantum network is stable. All demonstration protocols are in place. They won't know what hit them." Ambassador Chen nodded, adjusting her ceremonial staff. "Time to give them their show. Remember, let them throw the first punch. Let them challenge us. Everything depends on the galaxy seeing them as the aggressors." The assembly hall was already buzzing with activity when they arrived. The gathered species had spent the night sharing stories of human technological failures, each tale more embellished than the last. The Xanaxians were particularly vocal, describing how they had observed human ships struggling with basic gravitational slingshot maneuvers. High Elder Caxtil called the assembly to order, its massive form looming over the gathered representatives. Before we begin today's proceedings, the Voidborn delegation has requested an opportunity to assess our potential new members more thoroughly. The Voidborn representative floated forward, its dark energy form rippling with barely contained amusement. We have observed that humans place great value on their military capabilities, it said, its words translated into 1,000 languages simultaneously. Perhaps they would care to demonstrate their defensive technologies. A wave of anticipation swept through the assembly. This was what they had been waiting for, a chance to publicly humiliate the upstart species. Several delegates leaned forward, recording devices ready to capture what they assumed would be an embarrassing display of primitive technology. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. We would be honored to participate in such a demonstration. However, we request that the terms be clearly stated for all to witness. The Voidborn representative rippled in what passed for laughter among its kind. Simple enough. We will launch a standard military probe, one of our older models to be sporting. Your delegation will attempt to detect and intercept it using whatever means you possess, a basic test that any spacefaring race should be able to manage. Sarah nodded slowly. And the parameters of this test, we would not wish to exceed any safety protocols. Several delegates laughed openly at this. Safety protocols. For a race that could barely manage stable fusion reactors. The High Elder's mandibles clicked in amusement. You may deploy any defensive measures you wish, within the assembly hall's containment field. Though I doubt you possess anything that could damage our probe. Very well, Sarah said. We accept these terms. Please proceed with your demonstration whenever you're ready. The Voidborn representative's dark energy form pulsed with satisfaction. With a gesture, it materialized what appeared to be a small sphere of absolute darkness, a probe built with technology that could bend light itself. Without warning, it launched the probe toward the human delegation. The probe moved faster than most species could track, its path random and unpredictable. It was a favorite tool of the Voidborn, used to test the defensive capabilities of potential allies. Most younger races couldn't even see it coming, let alone stop it. The human delegation didn't move. They didn't deploy any visible defenses. They simply stood there, seemingly helpless as the probe approached. Several delegates leaned forward, eager to see the human's panicked reaction. Then, 3 meters from the human delegation, the probe simply vanished. The assembly fell silent. The Voidborn representative's form flickered in confusion. Where? What did you? Ambassador Chen smiled. I believe you'll find your probe has been safely contained. She held up her ceremonial staff, and within its crystalline head, the dark sphere could be seen, trapped in what appeared to be a bubble of twisted space-time. Impossible, the Voidborn hissed. That level of containment technology requires manipulation of quantum fields on a scale your species cannot achieve. Dr. Patel stepped forward. Perhaps you'd like to explain how we managed it then, or shall we demonstrate some of our other capabilities? The assembly erupted in shocked whispers. The High Elder's compound eyes focused intently on the human delegation. You've been concealing your true technological level, it said, mandibles clicking rapidly. This is a violation of Concordat protocol. Is it? Admiral Rodriguez spoke for the first time. We presented exactly what we possessed. No more, no less. If you chose to make assumptions about our capabilities based on your own prejudices, that's hardly our fault. Sarah stepped forward again, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Perhaps now would be a good time to discuss the real reason we're here. Not as supplicants begging for admission to your Concordat, but as equals offering an opportunity for genuine cooperation. The crystalline walls of the assembly hall suddenly darkened, and in the space above the gathered delegates, a holographic display sprang to life. It showed the sector surrounding the hall, and scattered throughout it were hundreds of signals that hadn't been there moments before. What you're seeing, Sarah explained, is our ghost fleet dropping their quantum camouflage. Ships that have been in position for months, undetected by even your most advanced sensors. We could have revealed ourselves at any time, but we chose to wait, to observe, to learn. The delegates stared at the display in stunned silence. The ships were unlike anything they had seen before. Sleek, almost organic in design, their hulls seeming to bend light around them even now that they were visible. We came to you not because we needed admission to your Concordat, Sarah continued, but because we believed in the possibility of genuine cooperation between species. Unfortunately, you chose to respond with mockery and condescension. Now we must ask ourselves, and you, what kind of relationship we truly want to build. The High Elder's massive form seemed to shrink slightly. You deceived us. No, Sarah corrected. We showed you exactly what you expected to see. Your own preconceptions did the rest. Consider this a lesson in the danger of assumptions, and an opportunity to start again, this time as equals. The assembly hall remained silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't the primitive species they had mocked. They were something far more dangerous, an advanced civilization that had chosen to hide their true capabilities, watching and learning while the galaxy's powers revealed their strengths and weaknesses. The assembly hall had descended into chaos. Representatives from 2,000 civilizations spoke all at once, their voices rising in a cacophony of demands, accusations, and barely concealed fear. The mighties and Axians, who had so recently mocked humanity's primitive technology, now stood rigid with tension, their crystalline armor vibrating at frequencies that betrayed their anxiety. Admiral Rodriguez watched it all with the calm demeanor of someone who had planned for this exact moment. He keyed a sequence into his ceremonial medallion, another piece of supposedly decorative equipment that was far more than it appeared. Above the assembly, the holographic display shifted, showing the Ghost Fleet in greater detail. The ships were works of art, as much as weapons of war. Their hulls rippled with patterns that seemed to draw inspiration from Earth's deep-sea creatures, all smooth curves and organic flow lines. But it was their technology that truly captured attention. Even now, fully revealed, they seemed to flicker in and out of reality, as if they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Perhaps, Sarah Chen said, her voice cutting through the chaos, a more comprehensive demonstration is in order. She nodded to Dr. Patel, who initiated a sequence on her datavat. The Ghost Fleet moved, not with the crude burning of fusion drives or the distortion of conventional FTL engines, but with a grace that defied physics as most species understood it. The ships didn't so much travel through space as they seemed to convince space itself to move around them. Quantum displacement drive, Dr. Patel explained to the stunned assembly. Why push against the fabric of space-time when you can simply ask it to rearrange itself? Much more efficient than conventional propulsion systems. A void-born representative, its dark energy form crackling with agitation, surged forward. This is impossible. Your species was barely achieving stable fusion when we first contacted you. We monitored your development. We saw your primitive attempts at FTL travel. Sarah smiled. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see. Those primitive ships. Decoys designed to broadcast exactly the kind of emissions you would expect from a developing civilization. Meanwhile, our real fleet was already deployed throughout the galaxy, gathering intelligence, learning about potential friends and threats. High Elder Caxtil's compound eyes focused on the human delegation with new intensity. How long? It demanded. How long have you been watching us? Long enough, Admiral Rodriguez answered. Long enough to observe how the Concordat treats emerging civilizations. Long enough to witness the politics, the power plays, the subtle manipulations. Long enough to know that if we revealed ourselves too soon, we would never be treated as equals. As if to emphasize his point, one of the Ghost Fleet vessels performed a maneuver that should have been impossible. It seemed to fold in on itself, vanishing completely, only to reappear simultaneously at 12 different points around the assembly hall. The display caused several delegates to stumble backward in shock. "What you're seeing," Dr. Paddle explained, her tone that of a teacher addressing particularly slow students, "is quantum superposition on a macroscopic scale. Each ship can exist in multiple states simultaneously, making them effectively impossible to target with conventional weapons. It's really quite basic physics once you understand the underlying principles." The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the Ghost Fleet continued its dance through space. Ships phased in and out of reality, moved with impossible precision, and demonstrated capabilities that most species had considered theoretically impossible. "But why?" a Xanaxian delegate finally asked. "Why this deception? Why not simply reveal yourselves from the beginning?" Sarah stepped forward, her expression serious. "Because we needed to understand, not just your technology, but your culture, your politics, your morality. We needed to know if the Concordat was truly interested in peaceful cooperation, or if it was merely a tool for the strong to dominate the weak." She gestured at the holographic display, where the Ghost Fleet had arranged itself into a complex three-dimensional pattern. "We could have revealed ourselves at any time. We could have demanded admission to the Concordat by force. Instead, we chose patience. We chose to learn. And what we learned," she paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembly, "was disappointing." The High Elder's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "You speak of deception while accusing us of moral failings. We speak of survival," Admiral Rodriguez countered. "When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, we didn't know what we would find among the stars. But we knew one thing. We needed to be careful. History has taught us that when technologically advanced civilizations encounter less advanced ones, the results are rarely pleasant for the latter." Dr. Paddle stepped forward, her datapad displaying new information. "We monitored your communications. We saw how you treated other emerging civilizations. The guidance that always seemed to benefit the established powers. The protection that came with heavy prices. We decided to take a different approach." Above them, the Ghost Fleet continued its impossible maneuvers. Each movement was calculated to demonstrate capabilities that the Concordat species had thought impossible. Ships phased through solid matter, split into multiple copies of themselves, and performed feats that challenged fundamental understanding of physics. "This is not a threat," Sarah assured the assembly, though her tone carried a subtle edge. "This is an invitation to reconsider your assumptions. About humanity, yes, but more importantly, about how the Concordat operates, about how it treats new civilizations, about what true cooperation could look like." The assembly hall fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just revealed advanced technology. They had demonstrated a level of strategic thinking and patience that few species could comprehend. They had watched, learned, and planned, all while being dismissed as primitives. And now, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted irrevocably. The question was no longer whether humanity would be admitted to the Concordat, but what changes their revelation would bring to the galactic order itself. In the hours following humanity's revelation, the assembly hall transformed into a hive of frantic diplomatic activity. Species that had sneered at humans just days before now scrambled to establish private communications channels with the Earth delegation. The Xanaxians, in particular, had abandoned all pretense of superiority, their crystalline forms dimmed in what their kind recognized as a gesture of deference. Ambassador Chen sat at the center of a diplomatic storm, her ceremonial staff now openly acknowledged as the powerful quantum computer it had always been. She observed as High Elder Caxtil attempted to maintain order among the increasingly agitated delegates. "The Concordat must adapt," the High Elder announced, its mandibles moving in patterns that indicated extreme stress. "Clearly, our assumptions about technological development and species advancement require revision." Admiral Rodriguez stood at the hall's observation deck, watching as several Ghost Fleet vessels performed patrol patterns that defied conventional physics. "They're starting to understand," he murmured to Dr. Patel. "But they still don't grasp the full implications." Dr. Patel nodded, her fingers dancing across her now revealed quantum interface. "They're focusing on the technology. They haven't yet realized that the real revolution isn't in our ships or weapons." The Voidborn representative, its dark energy form substantially diminished from its earlier arrogant display, approached the human delegation. "We wish to propose an exchange of technical knowledge," it said, its translation carrying undertones of desperate eagerness. Sarah smiled diplomatically. "Perhaps we should discuss something more fundamental first, like why the Concordat feels the need to maintain such rigid hierarchies of technological advancement." The question sent ripples through the assembled delegates. A Xanaxian elder, its crystalline armor now tuned to frequencies of submission, stepped forward. "It has always been thus. The strong guide the weak. Those with advanced technology protect and nurture those without, and extract considerable benefits in return," Admiral Rodriguez observed dryly. "We've seen the trade agreements your protection requires, the resources you demand, the technology you withhold." The assembly hall grew quiet as humans finally spoke the truths that had gone unacknowledged for millennia. Sarah stood, her presence somehow filling the vast space, despite her relatively small stature. "Humanity could have revealed ourselves years ago," she said. "We could have demanded concessions, forced our way into your power structures. Instead, we watched, we learned, and what we saw convinced us that the galaxy needs something different than another powerful race demanding tribute from the weak." She gestured, and a holographic display shifted to show images from across the galaxy. Emerging civilizations struggling under the weight of Concordat protection, worlds stripped of resources to pay for technological access, species forced into economic servitude to their supposed protectors. "This ends today," Sarah declared. "Not through force, though we've demonstrated we possess that, but through choice. Humanity proposes a new model of galactic cooperation." Dr. Patel stepped forward, her quantum interface projecting new data into the air. "We've developed technologies that could benefit every species in this assembly, but we won't sell them. We won't use them as leverage. Instead, we propose open sharing of knowledge, with safeguards to prevent abuse." The High Elder's compound eyes flickered rapidly. "You would simply give away your advantages." "No," Admiral Rodriguez corrected. "We would work together to ensure that all species have the opportunity to advance at their own pace without exploitation. The strong helping the weak not for profit, but because it's right." The assembly erupted in a mixture of protests and excited discussions. The concept was radical, revolutionary even. For millennia, the Concordat had operated on principles of technological supremacy and carefully controlled advancement. A younger Voidborn representative, its dark energy form pulsing with what seemed like hope, moved forward. "How would this work? How could we ensure that advanced technology isn't misused?" Sarah smiled. "That's exactly the kind of question we should be asking. And it's why humanity spent years studying the galaxy before revealing ourselves. We've developed systems, safeguards, and protocols that could help manage this transition." She gestured, and the holographic display shifted again, showing a complex network of interconnected systems. "This is what we call the Guardian Protocol, a way to share knowledge while monitoring its use, ensuring that advanced technology is used for the benefit of all species, not just the powerful few." The assembly hall buzzed with discussion as delegates began to grasp the full implications of what humanity was proposing. This wasn't just a revelation of advanced technology. It was a complete reimagining of how galactic civilization could function. "Some of you are probably wondering why we would do this," Admiral Rodriguez said, his voice carrying across the hall. "Why we would give up our advantage after working so hard to conceal it. The answer is simple, because we've seen where the current path leads. We've seen the conflicts brewing beneath the surface of your supposed unity. We've seen the resentment building among the species you exploit. Dr. Patel's quantum interface displayed new data, predictions, probabilities, potential futures. Our models suggest that without significant change, the Concordat will face major upheaval within the next century. Multiple species are already developing hidden technologies, preparing for conflict. We're offering an alternative. The High Elder's mandibles clicked rapidly as it processed this information. You speak of revolution. We speak of evolution, Sarah corrected. A chance for the Concordat to become what it claims to be. A true alliance of species working together for the benefit of all. The choice is yours. But know this, humanity will no longer stand by and watch as developing species are exploited and oppressed. The Ghost Fleet ships outside the assembly hall seem to shimmer in agreement, their quantum drives creating patterns in space-time that served as a reminder of humanity's capabilities and their restraint in using them. One standard galactic month after humanity's revelation, the assembly hall bore witness to a ceremony unprecedented in Concordat history. Representatives from all member species gathered not in their traditional hierarchical arrangements, but in a new circular pattern that Ambassador Sarah Chen had suggested, a physical representation of the equality they were striving to achieve. High Elder Kextil, its massive form now devoid of its usual signs of superiority, stood at the center of the assembly. Today, it announced, its translated voice carrying notes of both humility and hope, we begin a new chapter in galactic history. The Concordat Reformation Treaty is ready for ratification. Above the assembly, the Ghost Fleet maintained its vigilant presence, though now their impossible maneuvers were viewed with appreciation rather than fear. Admiral Rodriguez stood with the human delegation, watching as centuries of rigid hierarchy began to crumble. The transition has been smoother than our models predicted, Dr. Patel murmured, her quantum interface displaying real-time data on the proceedings. 97% of member species have already signaled their support. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the smaller delegations, the representatives of younger civilizations who had so recently labored under the Concordat's protection. Their expressions showed a mixture of hope and disbelief as they prepared to sign a treaty that would give them equal voice in galactic affairs. A young Xanaxian approached the human delegation, its crystalline form vibrating at frequencies that indicated profound respect. We have begun implementing the knowledge-sharing protocols you suggested, it said. Already, 3 developing worlds have made technological leaps that would have taken decades under the old system. And how do the elders and actions feel about this? Admiral Rodriguez asked, though his slight smile suggested he already knew the answer. They are adapting, the Xanaxian replied. It is difficult to abandon old ways of thinking, but the benefits are becoming clear. When we help others advance without demanding tribute, they become allies rather than subjects. The assembly hall's crystalline walls shimmered as the ratification ceremony began. One by one, representatives approached the central platform where the treaty awaited their signature. The document itself was a marvel of human technology, a quantum lock data matrix that would preserve the agreement in the fabric of space-time itself. The Voidborn were among the first to sign, their dark energy forms pulsing with what seemed like excitement as they accepted the new order. Their representative paused before the human delegation. We were wrong about your species, it admitted. We saw your patience as weakness, your restraint as primitive limitation. We understand now that true strength lies not in domination, but in the wisdom to use power responsibly. Sarah stepped forward as Earth's turn to sign approached. The real test begins now, she addressed the assembly. Change is never easy, and what we're attempting has never been done before. But together, we have the opportunity to build something remarkable. She placed her hand on the quantum matrix, and the treaty pulsed with new energy. The Guardian Protocol, humanity's gift to the galaxy, began its work, not as a tool of control, but as a framework for cooperation and mutual advancement. Dr. Patel's quantum interface displayed the first results of the new system. Across the galaxy, restricted technologies were being shared with developing civilizations. But unlike the old system of exploitation, each transfer came with training, support, and most importantly, respect for each species' unique path of development. There will be challenges, Admiral Rodriguez acknowledged to a group of military leaders from various species. Change of this magnitude always faces resistance. That's why the Ghost Fleet will remain active, not as a threat, but as guardians of this new order we're building together. The High Elder, signing last as tradition dictated, turned its compound eyes to the human delegation. When you first revealed your true capabilities, many of us feared you would become what we had been, rulers who dominated through superior technology. Instead, you showed us a better way. The question remains, why? Sarah smiled, her expression carrying the weight of humanity's long journey to this moment. Because we remembered our own history, she said. Earth's past is filled with examples of what happens when advanced civilizations encounter less developed ones. We learned those lessons so that we wouldn't repeat them among the stars. As the ceremony concluded, the assembly hall's artificial sky filled with a spectacular display. The Ghost Fleet performing a synchronized quantum dance that defied physics and imagination alike. But now, instead of being a demonstration of power, it was a celebration of possibility. The hard work begins now, Dr. Paddle said, reviewing the implementation schedules for the Guardian Protocol. Changing technology is easy compared to changing minds and cultures. True, Sarah agreed. But for the first time in galactic history, we're all working toward the same goal. Not perfect equality, but equal opportunity for all species to reach their full potential. Admiral Rodriguez watched as delegates from formerly antagonistic species began engaging in earnest discussion about joint projects and shared discoveries. Look at them, he said softly, already forming connections that would have been impossible a month ago. The Ghost Fleet's quantum drives hummed in harmony with the assembly hall's crystalline walls, creating patterns that seemed to represent the new interconnections forming throughout galactic society. Humanity had revealed not just their technological advancement, but their vision for a different kind of future, one where strength was measured not by dominion over others, but by the ability to lift all species toward their highest potential. The age of exploitation was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And as Sarah Chen looked out over the transformed assembly hall, she knew that while the path ahead would not be easy, it would lead to heights that no species could reach alone.